The quiet man in the line, the sun was barely up, and the wind whispered through the trees as a small crowd gathered near the cliffside. The mountain view was stunning, but most eyes were fixed on the narrow platform that hung over the edge. This was the famous Skyfall Ridge, home to one of the highest bungee jumps in the world. People came from all over just to feel that moment. The rush of stepping off solid ground, trusting a rope with your life. In the line, a quiet man stood alone. He wore simple jeans, a faded hoodie, and a baseball cap that shadowed most of his face. No one paid him much attention. Everyone was too busy laughing, posing for photos, or live streaming the moment to their followers. But a group of young influencers a few feet ahead couldn't help but notice him eventually. "Hey, isn't that— Wait a minute," one of them said, squinting. "No way," another laughed. "Keanu Reeves here, dressed like that? Come on. Maybe it's just a look-alike. That guy looks too awkward." The man didn't respond. He simply looked out at the view, his hands resting calmly in his pockets. When the group moved ahead, they kept glancing back and whispering. They giggled like kids in school, pointing when they thought he wouldn't notice. They didn't know Keanu heard everything. He always heard everything, and he always let it go. But that day was different. Keanu hadn't come to Skyfall Ridge for thrills or attention. He wasn't shooting a film or doing a stunt. He had come for something much deeper, something he hadn't told anyone about. 3 weeks earlier, he had received a letter. Not a text or an email, a real letter, handwritten, in shaky cursive. It was from a young girl named Emily. She was 13 years old, living with a rare heart condition, and had spent most of her life in and out of hospitals. Her dream wasn't to meet a movie star or go to Hollywood. Her dream was to do something brave, something impossible. In her letter, Emily wrote, "I saw a video of you jumping off a building in a movie, and it made me feel strong, like maybe I could be brave too. But I'm not allowed to leave the hospital, and I'll never get to do something like that. So I was wondering, could you do it for me?" Keanu read that letter over and over again. Then he folded it, put it in his pocket, and promised himself he would do exactly what she asked. Now here he was, standing in line to jump off a cliff. Not for fame, not for fun, but for a little girl he had never met. But life has a way of testing people, especially those who choose humility. "Yo," said one of the influencers, turning back toward Keanu. "Are you seriously doing this? No offense, man, but you don't look like you're ready for something this intense." His friends laughed. "Maybe they have a kiddie version," another one joked. Keanu looked at them and smiled, just slightly. "I'll be all right. You sure?" The first guy smirked. "You know what? Let's make it interesting. Loser has to buy coffee for everyone." "I'm not here to compete," Keanu said softly. "Yeah, right," the guy scoffed. "Whatever. Helps you sleep at night." The staff at the top of the ridge began calling names. One by one, jumpers were checked in, strapped up, and sent soaring off the edge. When it was the influencer group's turn, they put on a show. Phones out, screaming for the camera, pretending to be terrified and laughing through it. They high-fived the workers and acted like they'd just conquered Mount Everest. And when they were done, they sat off to the side to watch everyone else, waiting for someone to mess up. When Keanu stepped up, the instructor glanced at him. "Have you ever done anything like this before?" the woman asked. "Not quite like this," Keanu replied, his voice calm but firm. "You okay with the height?" He looked down, then back up. "Yes." She nodded and started the routine checks. "You're all set. When you're ready, just step to the edge and jump on the countdown." Keanu took a breath. This wasn't just about fear. This was about trust. The kind that little Emily had placed in him with a piece of paper and a hope that someone out there would care. He closed his eyes and pictured her smile. 3, 2, 1. He stepped off. The wind roared in his ears as the earth rushed up to meet him. For a moment there was silence, pure silence. No voices, no cameras, no judgment, only the sky and the sound of his heart. And then the cord snapped him back up, sending him flying upward like a bird, back and forth, higher and lower, until he came to a slow, gentle stop. The workers lowered him to the ground, and a soft cheer went up from the staff nearby. But the influencers didn't cheer. They laughed. Dude, that was the slowest jump I've ever seen, one of them snorted. Did you see his face? He looked like he was about to cry. Who even jumps like that? He just tipped over like a sack of potatoes. Keanu sat for a moment, catching his breath, not from fear but from the overwhelming feeling inside his chest. The letter, the girl, the meaning. A few feet away, one of the workers walked over. She looked young, maybe early 20s, and had been quiet the whole time. "You're Keanu Reeves," she said, not as a question but a realization. He nodded. "I saw the letter," she whispered. "My little cousin is in the same hospital. Emily talks about you all the time." Keanu smiled, truly smiled for the first time that day. "She's the reason I'm here." The worker's eyes filled with tears. "I wish they knew," she said, glancing back at the group laughing nearby. "I wish they understood what this really meant." Keanu looked at her gently. "It's okay. Some things aren't for show." But fate wasn't done yet. Unbeknownst to Keanu, someone had recorded his jump. Not the influencers, but a quiet mother sitting off to the side with her teenage son, who had anxiety and had come to Skyfall Ridge to face his fear. She filmed Keanu's jump because she noticed how calm he looked, how peaceful. She wanted to show her son that courage could be quiet. Later that night, she uploaded the video with a caption, "This man jumped without fanfare. I learned later that he did it for a sick little girl. I don't know who he is, but he reminded me what bravery looks like." The video didn't go viral right away, but the right people saw it, and everything began to change. Meanwhile, back at the ridge, the influencers packed up their gear, still laughing. "Man, that guy was a joke," one said. "Seriously, who even jumps like that?" But before they left, the young staff member approached them. "Hey," she said calmly. "You guys know who that was, right? Some washed-up actor, right? That was Keanu Reeves. And he didn't come here for a thrill. He came because a sick little girl wrote him a letter asking him to do something brave for her." They fell silent. "She can't ever leave the hospital," the staffer added, her voice trembling. "But she watches him in movies to feel strong. And he came here today. Not for himself, not for anyone else, but for her." The group looked at each other. Suddenly, the laughter didn't feel so funny. Across the world, that same night, Emily sat in her hospital bed. She held a tablet in her lap, headphones over her ears. Her nurse had found the video and saved it for her. She watched as Keanu stepped to the edge of the cliff. She held her breath as he jumped, and when he soared through the air, her face lit up like the sun. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she wasn't sad. She was brave. She whispered, "Thank you, Keanu." And somewhere, far away, Keanu sat in a quiet diner sipping tea, his heart full. He didn't need the world to clap for him. He only needed one little girl to smile. When the world started watching the next morning, Keanu Reeves woke up before sunrise. His phone buzzed softly on the nightstand, but he ignored it at first. He wasn't expecting anyone to call. Not today. Not ever, really. For him, yesterday had been personal. He did what he promised. He honored a child's courage. He didn't need cameras or headlines. Just a clear sky, a moment of silence, and a leap of faith. But something had shifted. When he finally glanced at his phone, he noticed over 20 missed calls, dozens of messages, and hundreds of unread notifications. Most were from people he hadn't spoken to in years, old co-workers, journalists, even strangers. He rubbed his eyes and opened one of the texts. It read, "Dude, you're trending worldwide. What did you do?" Keanu scrolled down and found the video, the one the quiet mother had filmed. It had already reached 500,000 views, and the numbers were rising fast. He watched himself on the screen, calm, silent, stepping forward into the open air. But what caught his attention wasn't the video itself. It was the comments. One read, "This wasn't for attention. This was for love. You can see it in his." Another said, "My daughter has been in the hospital for 2 years. This man just gave her hope." And then another, "My son has severe anxiety." He watched this video and said, "If he can do it, Maybe I can try something too. Keanu put the phone down and sat quietly for a moment. He had tried to disappear into the background, to do something kind and walk away, but the world had noticed. By mid-afternoon, news outlets had picked up the story. They tried to call it a stunt, a surprise act by a Hollywood icon. They showed the video, zoomed in on his face, tried to make it dramatic. But the truth was quieter than all that. Meanwhile, the influencer group that had laughed at him the day before was having a very different experience. Their own videos, loud, flashy, filled with forced jokes, barely reached a few thousand views. Some of their followers started tagging them under the bungee jump video. Was this the guy you made fun of? You were laughing at him? That man did more in one quiet jump than you've done in your whole career. They didn't know what to say. Suddenly, their cameras felt heavier. Their smiles looked different. And their content, usually full of staged pranks and fake emotions, felt empty. Back at the hospital, Emily's room was filled with flowers, cards, and small stuffed animals from people around the world. The hospital staff had never seen anything like it. A few reporters had tried to reach out to Emily's parents for a statement, but her mother politely declined. She said, "This was never about going viral. It was about my daughter believing that someone heard her." But that didn't stop people from sending love. Letters came in from countries Emily had never even heard of. Children from other hospitals wrote, saying they felt braver now. Soldiers wrote to say they remembered what they were fighting for. And every time someone asked, "Who is your hero?" Emily gave the same answer. "The quiet man who jumped for me." Keanu stayed away from the cameras. He didn't post online. He didn't go on talk shows. But one day, a soft knock came on his door. It was the young staff member from the jump site. She stood there nervously, holding something in her hands. "I know you didn't want attention," she said. "But Emily's nurse asked me to give this to you." She handed him a small box. Inside was a handmade bracelet made of purple thread and tiny beads that spelled out one word: brave. Keanu held it gently, his fingers trembling. "She made it herself." "The girl said. Even with her condition, she insisted. He nodded, quietly overwhelmed. "Do you want to visit her?" she asked. "You don't have to, but I think it would mean the world." Keanu took a breath. Then he said, "Yes." The hospital was quiet when he arrived. No cameras, no announcements, just the soft beeping of machines and the hum of healing. Emily's room was filled with light, drawings taped to the walls, a stuffed bunny on her bed, and that same video paused on her tablet. When she saw him walk in, her eyes grew wide. She tried to sit up, but he gently motioned for her to stay still. "Hi, Emily," he said softly. She whispered, "You really came." He smiled. "You asked me to do something brave, so I did. And now, I think you've been doing something braver every single day." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Did it scare you?" "A little," he said. "But thinking of you made me feel strong," she giggled. "I felt strong too." They sat for a long time. No big speeches, no fancy words, just shared silence between two people who had connected in the most unexpected way. Before he left, she said, "Keanu, people are saying nice things about you now, but I already knew. Because I believed in you before they did." He knelt beside her bed and whispered, "And I believe in you." Days passed, weeks, and then something else happened. A young boy named Marcus, who had watched the Bungee video, asked his parents if he could try going outside without holding someone's hand. It was a small thing, but for a child with social anxiety, it was a huge step. A teenage girl with a stutter gave a speech in class for the first time. A veteran who hadn't left his house in 2 years signed up to volunteer at a community center. The ripple had begun, and at the center of it was not a superhero, not a celebrity, but a man who chose to be humble, to jump not for applause but for love. The influencers, once full of noise and popularity, started to fade from view. One of them, the leader of the group, eventually released a quiet video. No background music, No edits. Just him in a room. I messed up, he said. We laughed at someone who was doing something real. I forgot that real strength doesn't always come with a spotlight. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. Back at the hospital, Emily's condition took a turn. Her doctors did everything they could, but there were days she felt weaker, more tired. Her family stayed by her side every minute. And one night, as rain tapped gently against the window, she whispered to her nurse, "Do you think Keanu would jump again? Maybe even higher this time?" The nurse smiled, brushing Emily's hair gently. "If you asked him, I think he would." That night, Keanu sat on his balcony looking up at the stars. He wore the bracelet Emily had made, and though he hadn't spoken to the media, he knew the world had changed. Not because of him, but because one little girl dared to believe that someone cared. And when belief meets action, the whole world can feel it. As the night grew quiet, Keanu closed his eyes and whispered, "I'll jump again, Emily. For you. As many times as you need." The second jump, the rain was soft the next morning. It fell gently over the city like a whisper, as if the sky itself didn't want to disturb the quiet. In a small hospital room, Emily slept peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling beneath warm blankets. Beside her bed, her mother sat reading a letter. Her hands trembled as she held the paper, folded many times, written in neat, careful handwriting. It was from Keanu. It said, "Dear Emily, you asked if I'd jump again. The answer is yes. Not just once. Not just twice. As many times as it takes, until every brave heart like yours knows they are not alone. This time, I'll go even higher, and I'll carry your name with me." Emily's mother wiped her tears and placed the letter gently beside her daughter's hand. She whispered, "He's doing it for you again, sweetheart." Meanwhile, Keanu stood on the edge of another cliff. This one was even taller than the last. Skyfall. Ridge had called to say that a nearby mountain station was opening for its seasonal launch. The jump there was considered the ultimate test by thrill seekers. It was higher, windier, and more dangerous. But Keanu didn't flinch. This wasn't for fame. It wasn't for headlines. It was for Emily. For all the children like her who lived every day on the edge of something far scarier than a cliff. The media had caught wind of his decision, but he had asked the station to keep it quiet. No reporters. No announcements. Just him and the sky. But word has a way of spreading, and on the day of the jump, something unexpected happened. A small crowd gathered. Parents, children, nurses, quiet strangers holding signs that said things, like "For Emily" and "Thank you for jumping." Some had driven hours just to watch from a distance. They didn't shout. They didn't chant. They simply stood in silence watching a man take a step for someone else. Up on the mountain, Keanu took a slow breath. The wind was louder here. It pulled at his clothes and rattled the ropes, but he stayed still. A technician came over to check his gear. "You sure you want to do this, sir? This jump, it's no joke." Keanu nodded. "I'm not doing it for fun." The man looked into his eyes and saw something different. Not fear, not pride. Something deeper. Something unshakable. "Then good luck," the technician said softly. "And thank you." Keanu adjusted his wrist. The bracelet Emily had made was still there. "Ready when you are," came the voice from the station. He stepped forward and jumped. The fall felt endless. The wind screamed, the air pressed against his skin, and the earth below spun like a dream. But in that moment, all Keanu could think about was Emily. Her tiny voice, her shy smile, her bravery. This wasn't about falling. It was about rising. As the rope stretched and snapped him back up, the crowd below let out a soft gasp. Not a cheer, just breath, like they'd all been holding it together. He bounced once, twice, and then hung still in the air, suspended between earth and sky. When he was lowered down, the crowd parted gently. No one rushed him. No one shoved a camera in his face. Instead, a little boy stepped forward, holding something in his hand. It was a paper heart, cut unevenly with tiny scissors. "This is for Emily," the boy said. Keanu knelt and took it with both hands. I'll make sure she gets it. At the hospital, Emily watched the jump on a live stream one of the nurses had set up secretly. Her face lit up as Keanu stepped off the edge. When he began to fall, she reached out toward the screen as if to catch him. He's doing it again, she whispered. He's flying. The moment he landed, she clapped quietly to herself. He did it, Mama, she said. He really did it. Her mother nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. Yes, baby, he did. But the story wasn't over. That night, the hospital received something unexpected, a donation, not from a corporation, not from a foundation, but from regular people, viewers, strangers, families, and children who had watched the jump and wanted to help. Some gave $5, some gave $20, a few gave more. The message was simple. We don't have much, but we believe in what he's doing. We believe in Emily. In less than 2 days, the hospital's pediatric wing received over $50,000, enough to upgrade equipment, bring in new specialists, and even open a small therapy center for children like Emily. When the hospital director tried to thank Keanu, he simply said, I didn't do it. They did, but not everyone was happy. A major TV host invited Keanu onto her show. When he politely declined, she went on air and made a joke about actors pretending to be heroes. It sparked debate. Some people criticized Keanu for not using the attention for charity events and photo ops. Others defended him, saying, he's showing us what real giving looks like. Keanu didn't respond. He didn't need to, because that night another letter arrived at the hospital, from Emily. It read, Dear World, I think we forget sometimes that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear old jeans and jump off cliffs. Sometimes they don't talk much, but they make you feel like you matter. Keanu didn't come to my room with cameras. He came with kindness. I don't care if the world forgets about him tomorrow. I won't. The letter was shared by a nurse on her private blog. Within hours, it was everywhere. Suddenly, it wasn't about the jump anymore. It was about something much deeper, what it means to do something good without expecting a reward. Parents began telling their kids about kindness in a new way. Teachers read the letter aloud in classrooms, and an online challenge began. Do something brave for someone else. No camera, no credit. It became known as the Quiet Hero Challenge. Keanu stayed silent through all of it. He didn't record a response. He didn't post online. Instead, he sat beside Emily one rainy afternoon and asked her, How are you feeling today? She looked up at him and said, Strong. He smiled. Then I'll keep jumping until the whole world feels the same. A few weeks later, Keanu received a call. A young man had been watching his story from another country, Brazil. He was a trauma survivor who had stopped leaving his house for almost 4 years. He said, I haven't stepped outside since the fire, but today, I opened the door. Then he paused, voice trembling. Because of you. Keanu didn't answer, right away. He just held the phone to his chest and closed his eyes. He knew in that moment that he didn't need to save the world. He just needed to keep going, one jump at a time. The letter that changed everything. The hospital hallway was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the occasional shuffle of footsteps. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing autumn leaves across the windows like nature was trying to send a message. In Emily's room, sunlight spilled across her bed, lighting up the stack of letters growing taller each day. Keanu had started visiting her every few days, never with a camera, never with an entourage. Sometimes they sat in silence. Other times they laughed. And sometimes they just listened, to music, to wind, or to the beating of life in a small, tired heart. But today was different, because today Emily gave him a new letter, and it wasn't meant just for him. She handed it to him carefully. The edges were decorated with purple marker stars. The paper had creases from how many times she had folded and unfolded it. I want you to read this, she said softly. But not just for yourself. I want you to share it. Are you sure? Keanu asked. She nodded. Yes. People need to hear it. He sat by the window and read, "Dear world, I used to think I was small. I used to think I didn't matter because I couldn't run or play like the other kids. But then someone jumped for me. Not because he had to, not because he wanted to be famous, but because he cared. Now I know something big. You don't have to be strong to matter. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't have to be famous to be remembered. Sometimes the bravest people are quiet. Sometimes the kindest people are tired. And sometimes, one person doing something small changes everything. If you're reading this, please don't wait for someone else to do the good thing. Be the one. Jump, if you can. Love, Emily." Keanu didn't speak for a long time after he finished reading. Then, without a word, he stood up, walked to the hallway, and made a call. 2 days later, Keanu appeared in a rare live interview. He wore a plain shirt. No makeup, no stylist. Just him and the interviewer. People tuned in from all over the world. The interviewer tried to open with jokes, but Keanu gently shifted the tone. "This isn't about entertainment," he said. "This is about a little girl named Emily, and the letter she just wrote." He read the entire letter on air. By the time he finished, the host had tears in her eyes. The broadcast went viral, not because of a fancy set or dramatic music, but because a man read a child's truth out loud. In the following days, people everywhere began sharing Emily's message. Schools created Emily boards, where students posted one brave or kind thing they did each week. A bus driver in Kansas stopped traffic to help an old man cross the street and said, "This one's for Emily." A firefighter in Italy tattooed a purple star on his wrist. An entire classroom in Tokyo made a video called "Small Acts, Big Hearts," where they showed themselves helping classmates, feeding animals, and cheering up lonely kids. It was like the world had remembered something it had forgotten, and at the center of it all was a little girl in a hospital bed and a man who chose to jump. Meanwhile, back in Hollywood, agents and producers started reaching out to Keanu. "We can turn this into a docuseries," one said. "Netflix would love this," said another. "We'll call it The Quiet Hero. We'll make millions." Keanu refused every offer. He didn't even pause to think. This wasn't a brand. This wasn't a moment to sell. This was sacred. But not everyone understood. An old actor Keanu had once worked with made a post online. He wrote, "Back in my day, actors didn't play saints. They stayed in their lane. It got a lot of attention. Some agreed, others didn't. But Keanu didn't respond. He never responded to hate. Instead, he made another jump. This time, it wasn't off a cliff. It was off a stage. He showed up, unannounced, at a community theater in a small town where a child had written him a thank you letter for inspiring her to perform despite her disability. He sat quietly in the back row, watched her play, and when the curtains closed, he stood and clapped. Just one man, no camera, no spotlight. Just love. At the hospital, Emily's condition began to worsen again. Some days she was too weak to talk. Other days, she was wide awake and smiling. But the doctors said things were getting harder. She asked her mother, "Will I still matter if I don't get better?" Her mom held her hand and said, "Sweetheart, you changed the world without even leaving this room." "But I want to see the stars," Emily whispered. Just once. The next day, Keanu got a call. And that night, he made his most daring plan yet. Not a jump, but a sky show. He rented a small observatory near the hospital. Then he reached out to a group of astronomers and lighting engineers. He asked them one simple thing. "Can you make the stars come to her?" They worked overnight. And the next evening, as the sun went down, the entire hospital rooftop lit up like the sky had opened just for Emily. Twinkling lights danced across the ceiling. Soft music played in the background. Hospital staff carried her bed gently up the elevator, wrapped her in blankets, and wheeled her to the roof. She opened her eyes and gasped. "Is this real?" she asked. Keanu was waiting with a smile. "You said you wanted to see the stars," he said. "So we brought them to you." Everyone who stood on that rooftop cried, not because of sadness, but because they were witnessing something so full of love that it cracked them open. Later that night, Emily looked up at Keanu and said, "Can I tell you a secret?" "Of course," he said. "I'm not scared anymore." The world had seen many things, but in that moment it saw the power of one man listening to one small voice, not for fame, not for reward, just because it was right. The promise beneath the stars for the next few days the hospital felt different. It wasn't just the lights that had changed. It was something deeper. The nurses walked with softer steps. The doctors spoke with more warmth. Parents who had been afraid to hope began whispering, "Maybe," instead of "never." Emily's rooftop night had done something no medicine could. It gave people belief again. Keanu visited her every day after that, not with gifts, not with stories. Just his quiet presence sitting by her side, sometimes holding her hand, sometimes just listening to the machines beeping steadily in the background. He never told anyone what they talked about in those final days, but those moments became the most important part of his life. One afternoon, Emily looked up at him and asked, "Do you think the stars remember us?" Keanu smiled gently. "I think the stars are made of memories. They carry every wish ever whispered into the night." Emily thought about that, then nodded. "Then I'll become one. So you can always find me." He squeezed her hand. "I promise. I'll look up." The next morning, the nurse found a folded piece of paper on Emily's nightstand. It was addressed to the world. "Dear everyone, if you're reading this, I want you to know something very important. Life isn't about how long you live. It's about how deeply you love. I used to be scared of leaving, but now I know that when someone loves you enough to jump for you, you never really leave. You become part of something bigger. So please don't be sad. Do something kind. Help someone scared. Jump for someone who can't. That's how you keep me alive." Love, Emily. When Keanu read the letter, he didn't cry right away. He folded it carefully, placed it into his pocket near his heart, and walked outside into the morning light. The sky was overcast, not a single star, but in his mind, she was shining. The world reacted quickly. Emily's letter spread faster than anything before. It was translated into dozens of languages, printed in newspapers, read aloud on radio stations, written across murals, in quiet alleys and school walls. Her words appeared in places where hope had once gone missing. A war nurse in Gaza carried the letter in her coat pocket. A child recovering from surgery in Poland whispered its last line before sleep. A group of teenagers in South Africa painted, "Jump for someone who can't" across a skatepark wall. The ripples of her life reached places her feet never could. Keanu went silent again. He declined interviews, turned off his phone, left Los Angeles, without telling anyone. But he wasn't disappearing. He was preparing something. A month after Emily's passing, people around the world received a quiet notification, a video titled, "The Last Jump." It showed Keanu standing at the edge of the tallest bungee platform in the world, Macau Tower. He was alone. No crew, no press. Just the wind, the rope, and the sky. He spoke softly to the camera. "This jump isn't for views. It isn't for applause. It's for a little girl who believed the stars remember us." He held up the bracelet Emily had made him. "She taught me that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing anyway." He paused. Then he looked out at the clouds and whispered, "This one's for you." He jumped. The fall was breathtaking, not just because of the height, but because of what it meant. It was a goodbye. It was a promise. It was a symbol. When he reached the bottom and the rope pulled him back up, it felt like he was flying. And in the sky, a rainbow broke through the clouds. That same night, lights appeared all over the world. On rooftops, in parks, on hospital walls. Thousands of tiny lights, purple and gold, blinking in unison. People began calling it Emily's Hour, 1 hour where everyone did something kind. An old man handed out free coffee. A group of students cleaned up a beach. A mother hugged her child without rushing to say anything. Keanu never made another public jump after that, but his life had changed. He quietly funded a new children's wing at the hospital, named Emily's Garden. There were no signs with his name on them, just a plaque with a quote, "Do something kind. Jump for someone who can't." One day, years later, a boy came to that hospital wing. He was scared, thin, sick. He saw the plaque and asked the nurse, "Who was Emily?" The nurse smiled. "A little girl who taught the world how to love." The boy looked at the stars painted on the ceiling and said, "I want to be brave like her." Somewhere, far away from the city lights, Keanu sat beneath a sky full of stars. He whispered, "I still see you." And above him, a shooting star passed silently across the sky. The echo that never fades. Years had passed since that quiet girl named Emily lit up the world with her bravery. Her letter still traveled from classroom to classroom, hospital to hospital. Her words lived in hearts more than bookshelves. And Keanu Reeves, once known for action films and red carpets, was remembered now for something else entirely. Not everyone knew about the jump. Not everyone knew about the bracelet or the rooftop stars. But those who did never forgot. Keanu had chosen a life away from noise. He spent his days helping without headlines. Sometimes he visited sick children under different names. Sometimes he quietly paid hospital bills for strangers. Sometimes he just sat beside someone who was scared and listened. He never brought cameras. He never posted online. But in every room he entered, he brought peace like a candle lit in darkness. One day, he received a letter from a school in a small town. It was written by a boy named Samir, who had lost both of his parents in an accident. Samir was 10 years old and hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Not until he read Emily's letter, his teacher wrote. He stood up in front of the class, holding the letter, and said, "I think I want to jump now, not off anything, just into life again." Keanu folded the letter gently and placed it beside Emily's original note. He whispered, "She's still jumping." That same week, a documentary was released. Not by Hollywood, not by a network. It was created by nurses and teachers, children and volunteers. It was called The Echo. It showed how one child's quiet hope had changed communities around the world. How a simple act of kindness by a man at a bungee jump had become something people carried into their own lives. No narration, just real moments. A father reading Emily's letter to his daughter who had cancer. A teenage boy with a stutter giving a speech in front of his school with tears in his eyes. A woman on a rooftop, holding her baby, whispering, "This is for you, Emily." Keanu watched the documentary alone. He didn't cry. He simply sat still, holding the bracelet, the paper heart, and a memory that had become more than a moment. It had become movement. He thought back to the beginning, to that day at Skyfall Ridge. How the influencers laughed, how the wind had roared, how he had stepped off not knowing what would happen. Now, looking back, he realized that wasn't the day he jumped off a cliff. That was the day he jumped into purpose. Many of the influencers from that day had since changed paths. The leader of the group had shut down his old channel and started a nonprofit that helped kids with chronic illnesses travel to places they never dreamed of. His first mission had been inspired by Emily. He said, "I laughed at him once. Now I try to walk the road he showed us." Emily's mother had also become a quiet presence in the movement. She didn't give speeches, but she sent handwritten notes to every family who wrote in. Each letter ended the same way. "Your child matters. Their voice echoes. I know this, because mine did." One night, Keanu returned to Skyfall Ridge. He went alone, dressed simply like before. The cliff was silent now, the wind gentler. He stood at the edge, not to jump, but just to remember. He whispered to the air, "Thank you for letting me be part of your story." Then he sat down, legs dangling over the edge, and watched the sun sink behind the horizon. A small girl had walked this world for only a short time, but she taught us how to be brave, how to love without expecting return, how to light stars for others while fading into the sky. And a quiet man, who never asked to be noticed, had carried that light wherever he went. In the end, no statues were built, No blockbuster movies were made, but in hearts across the world, in thousands of little acts, every gentle hand, every brave choice, every whisper of hope, Emily lived on, and so did the man who jumped for her. As night fell, Keanu looked up. The stars blinked like memories, and he smiled, whispering one last time, "I see you."